Okay, so what does this mean for planners? I put on everybody's table a copy of the strategy document and the implementation plan, and I have extras here if you want to take any with you. But they're based on the 4 pillars, very closely related to the think tank idea hubs. And the first one is winter life. So I'm going to show you some photos and talk a bit about what this means for planners based on these organized along these 4 theme areas. So in terms of winter life, this morning, even Gordon Hume, he was talking about public health and how that's important. And in terms of relating it to myth busting, a lot of people think if you go outside in wintertime, you're going to get sick. The truth is, you're more likely to get sick if you stay inside in wintertime, in environments where the air is recirculated and all that. You need to get out and be active. So for planners, we need to think about providing opportunities for people to get outside and be active and not stop thinking about it as the off-season. So when you're working on the next suburban neighborhood or redevelopment in the city, you need to think about the outdoor spaces you provide and activities that they can support, like possibly skiing or skating, number of things. Right-of-ways, I'm not sure. I think this was a term that was coined by one of our think tank members. And they're basically areas where you can use sled-assisted mobility, like pull your kids on a toboggan to get to school, or kick sled. Has anybody heard of kick sleds or used one? Anyways, it's a form of active transportation in other parts of the world, namely Scandinavia. It's really, really popular and really excellent for people that are mobility challenged because it offers them stability. These are things to think about. And when you're planning and designing new neighborhoods in particular, it's a real opportunity because putting right-of-ways in mature neighborhoods has many challenges, crossing roads and driveways and things like that, how to make them work, because they need the snowpack. You can't clear the snow to the bare concrete. But in new neighborhoods, you might be able to think of creative ways to accommodate these. So I think that's a real opportunity.
One of the big discussions that we got into over and over and over, and I don't think there was ever a resolution, was snow removal. Mm-hmm. And how far do you go to the asphalt, or do you wait for it to get packed? And then of course we got into the thawing and freezing cycle. But leaving snow on the ground is excellent for those kinds of activities, the right-of-way activities.
Now this strange-looking building is part of an international design competition that they run in Winnipeg every year. And it's a warming hut competition, so this is one of the entries. And the reason I have an image of this is because I think we need some warming huts in Edmonton. And in particular, again, another opportunity or an important context to think about these is in the developing suburbs. Community leagues there likely will never be able to afford community league buildings. And yet they need winter gathering spaces. And you need to have shelter from the wind, and you need to capture sunlight there somehow. So I challenge you to think about warming huts in the suburbs in particular. And this is important. And here's another design, completely different from the design competition. I think at Deep Freeze this year, they're going to do another warming hut competition as well. These are a different kind of huts, but related to winter life. This is an outdoor winter market, which is another thing that we'd like to have more of in the city and could have in winter cities. This particular one's in the Distillery District in Toronto. They have really beautiful ones in Germany as well. So this is another thing to think about. But all of things to do in winter, like skating rinks and warming huts, it's all extra infrastructure. Even sometimes to provide gas for fire pit, you need to think about that in advance when you're providing amenities for communities. You need to think about providing winter amenities, and it means thinking about winter infrastructure. You can have a washroom, but in the wintertime, many of them are shut down because all the pipes aren't winterized. You need to think about winter amenities and having these things usable in the wintertime.
That was the number one thing our festivals people said cost them the most money, was having to bring in infrastructure that would be available in the summer and working, but was not available in the winter. So the electronic, the plug-in was like under 8 feet of snow and frozen. So those kinds of things at the beginning of a development are really vital.
Mm-hmm. So the winter life pillar is largely about finding the warmth in winter and getting outside, the heart and soul of a community. again, just thinking about this morning's presentation, Gordon Hume talked about livability being so important to a city's economic success and future. So this is why this pillar is so important, thinking about quality of life and opportunities to get outside and play. This transit was one of the things, it's touched upon in goal 2 of the strategy, but I put it in the design one because I think it fits there as well. But we talked about providing heated bus shelters. We already have some heated shelters in Edmonton, but we'd like to provide more of them and make it easier for people to take transit, more attractive. Here's a fun one, and I'm not sure which city this is in, but it's in the US somewhere. Maybe not so sustainable from that green perspective, but it might make me want to stand to wait for the bus there. Also have to think about providing infrastructure for winter cycling, or how we clear spaces, the cycle paths. And I'm really excited. We talked about how in Edmonton we do a really good job of clearing snow now for cars. That's something they've improved over the last couple of years. But we haven't put the same amount of thought into how to clear snow for pedestrians and cyclists. And in the implementation plan, one of the concrete actions that's in there, it talks about prioritizing snow clearing for pedestrians and cyclists. Right now it's done on a geographic basis because it's cheaper to do it that way. You just do one area and then move to the next one. You don't have to go back and forth moving trucks and moving things. But if you do it on a priority basis, the way you clear snow for automobiles, then the most important routes would get cleared first, and people can do winter commuting on their bikes in winter, because the first day you can't get to work on your bike is the day you put it away. At least that's true for me. And that tends to be true for a lot of people, so thinking about that. Now this is one of the slides, conceptual designs from the City Centre Airport redevelopment lands in Edmonton, now called Blatchford. And they've done a really good job taking into account winter conditions in that macro scale. So here they think about the cold northwesterly winds and trying to block them. Those green blobs, I think this might be a pointer, up here, those are hills. That's where they're placing the toboggan hills. And those are going to block a lot of the cold winds coming through this area. And also providing an amenity.
And I worked quite a lot on this project, so I'll just butt in as well. And the hills are being made, they don't usually let me talk about planning things because I'm not very accurate, but the hills are being made by the scooping of the soil they're going to use to make lakes and canals that will then become skating ponds. And so all of that will be used to make these huge, huge hills.
And the other really interesting thing that they've done here is the way they've oriented their streets here and the length of them. They're short, staggered streets. And that's so you also don't have the wind tunneling effect down the street. So it's more comfortable to walk at the street level to get where you're going because the winds, the major winds are blocked.
And along that straight section that you see, my side of the triangle, there's warming huts all along, planned for all along there, so people can go out for a stroll, grab a coffee, and sit in a warming hut, if not an outdoor patio. And that exposure is perfect for outdoor patios. So the architects really put a lot of thought into winter design.
Yeah, I think they're calling this, they gave it a name.
The Northern Lights Promenade.
Northern Lights Promenade, and it will capture sunlight there. Yeah. So they've done a really excellent job. We'll see how much of it makes it into the actual plans. Okay, so also need to think more on the micro scale, elements of pedestrian comfort at the street level. So also about capturing sunlight here, thinking about winds and the downdraft that may be shooting off a building, and how to protect pedestrians from falling snow or icicles, and auto spray. Boulevards is the best way to protect pedestrians from that auto spray, and wind. So this is key. Yeah, and you can see the place for snow storage. And Gordon Hume also talked about economic deficit and how we aren't growing in a sustainable way economically. And I know it costs more money to put in boulevards up front, but it saves so much money in the long term on maintenance costs. And cities can't afford to keep developing in unsustainable ways. I'll take your question in just a sec. In City of Edmonton, we have a really small proportion of boulevard streets. You think about cities like Winnipeg, it's the flip side. Almost every street there has boulevards, and they managed to figure out how to make it work. They have a housing market that's doing well. I'm not quite sure why it's more affordable there. Okay, there's design features you can think about, like having raised crosswalks. One of our think tank members was crossing the street on White Avenue at Edmonton and was walking down the curb ramp where the water pools and turns into ice, and she cracked her head open. So this is a design option that would prevent that from happening. The crosswalk is raised. The cars have to slow down a bit and go up to the sidewalk level and then go back down. And this is an option, especially for denser, more urban areas. And think about putting that in a downtown area in between two major building entrances. Think about how attractive that would be to cross there, as opposed to having to walk to the end of the block where the lights are, wait for the light to change while the winds are probably blowing, cross the street, and then walk back to the building entrance on the other side. If you put those mid-block, that would make a lot more sense.
And our senior population, that was the number one thing for them, was making the city more walkable, making the city able for pedestrians to walk. The other thing about walkability is we're always talking about educating people on what to wear and how to dress. And we're starting to get into winter fashion shows and winter education that does indeed show people how to dress for winter.
Also, in terms of design, you think about providing shelter from windy areas, like little, what are they called? Provide shelters or wind blocks in areas that serve as outdoor gathering spaces. So don't have everything all the way up to at the same level, but have, articulated building fronts.
And there's a lot of other design things that we can do. There's the layering of buildings, as Sue said, the design that capture the wind. I did see a thing on YouTube the other day from the U.S. about saying we can't harness the wind because then the wind would all go away and we'd have global warming. So that was the person's argument against wind power.
In other cities in the world, they also they prohibit heights above a certain building because they don't want to cast shadows, and because they know capturing sunlight is so important if you're a winter city. They also have bylaws encouraging use of color. And I know when I worked in current planning, we often would insist in the direct control zones to use a neutral palette. But now we want to leave that in the past and go for more vibrant colors, because winters, when you have lots of snow and white, it tends to be more monotone. We need to insert the color and interest into the cityscapes and use vibrant colors. And then there's somebody here mentioned the use of landscaping. So the placement of evergreens, coniferous trees versus deciduous ones. Put the evergreens where they're going to block the winds. Have the deciduous ones where you want shade in the summertime. And then also where you can possibly string them up with lights, because they add so much beauty in the wintertime. Or you can use uplighting. And there's all kinds of new technology, lighting technology with even video mapping. I don't know, has anybody heard of video mapping with lights? It's like a video on a building where you can see it do all kinds of really dynamic, interesting things.
One of the things that we got into in the winter city strategy was also of having a darkness strategy, and a strategy that didn't have light pollution but made effective use of light in winter. And so that's a whole other element. One of the things that we found, and I think we were talking a little bit about it before, was just the absence of winter photos. And you'll see now, in the book, we even had to do some sketches because there's so few winter photos. We're managing to catch a lot of them, and you'll see those reflected in our material. So I would encourage, if you're going to start to think about winter, to look at taking photos. We also became sort of watchdogs. We went to the Canadian Junior Hockey League championships that were in Edmonton, and you'd think if any place was going to showcase Edmonton in the winter, it would be a hockey tournament. And all the images were of summer. So when you're thinking about showcasing your city, when you're thinking of highlighting what Lloydminster or St. Albert or some of your communities look like, make sure that you include some beautiful winter images, because that's That's part of the reality, and that can become very much a selling feature. When you're looking at building new park spaces, new urban municipalities, how can you include those winter things so that you can use that as a selling feature? There's a development in Edmonton that's just occurred, and we were struck by the advertisement, and it said Winter City Design. And they're using that as sort of a calling card and a selling feature. And all of their images and all of their designs are much like the ones we've showed you, where they're offset, there's boulevards, there's colonnades, there's pocket parks in the sun. So as you're developing your communities, think about what would give you an edge against other municipalities or other planners in those developments to make them winter friendly and to make winter a beautiful feature for the community.
Here's the slide that just shows you the use of vegetation to block the winds and create more winter comfortable microclimates. And here's an example of a colorful building that I think adds a lot to the winter scape. And the Grand Boulevard in Somerset is another really good example. I think it really stands out.
And the city, if you're in Edmonton, the City of Edmonton just painted the Bonnie Doon pool, and they painted the pool this color, the outside of the pool, that beautiful, beautiful burnt orange. And there was quite a bit of protest in the summer because they thought, why is, it was a massive building. And in the winter, people just loved it because it was this beautiful pop of color and a very, bleak landscape. And much like that.
Mm-hmm. And here's an example of video mapping. This is from Quebec City. They made this big cathedral look like a birthday present or Christmas present, I guess. And it's dynamic, it moves around. And there's more simple forms of creative use of light. This was done for Winterlight, which was a 3-year pilot project in Edmonton a few years ago. But we need to think about how it all comes together and form, our landscapes. And are they going to be supportive of active winter life, of the public life that we desire, that Jan Gehl says we should be focused on first. So do the buildings and the spaces, do they support that life? In terms of the winter economy pillar, it does look at events, and do we have the spaces that support the events and the infrastructure to support the events to make them really wonderful. They bring a lot to the economy, and focusing on the economy is really important. As The Economist, just the issue I think that's out right now, it talks about that livability will drive economic growth in cities. This morning, Gordon Hume made the same point. So this is really important. There's a really important business case to be made in focusing on winter. Because it's an important season, comes every year, and it affects our quality of life. And we can't attract talent or maintain that creative capital if people are going to other places because we're just not providing the quality of life people want to have in wintertime. And part of that is providing outdoor winter patios. This was a minus 20 plus day that we did this, right on 124th Street in Edmonton. And it was actually pretty pleasant there because of the strong sunshine. It made it decent. So we'd like to see more of these. And we won't have many right away, but in 30 years, maybe we can have an active outdoor patio culture like they do in Copenhagen. And maybe we won't have them on the 4 days on average that are below minus 30, but we can certainly have them in the shoulder seasons. We can start gradually by extending the patio culture this season a little bit longer or a little bit sooner in the spring until we can have it on the days that are even minus 20 where it can, because of design, feel closer to zero. This is an outdoor patio on the Baltic Sea. Councillor Henderson took this photo when he went on an executive research trip. And he said even though there was an indoor space there, everybody chose to sit outside. And even though there were blankets there, they were mostly for show, that it felt significantly warmer than the minus 18. And this is an outdoor patio party that we co-hosted with NextGen when we were celebrating the approval of the strategy document by council. And this was a really cold night, but it was still lots of fun.
And I just have to, you could see the wine glasses on top there. Each of those inuksuks made out of ice had a tube in, and so you would pour a drink out at the top and it would come out chilled at the bottom. It was a real hit. And so that was a lot of fun. We had music and a band and lots of those lit up inuksuks. They looked beautiful. They did have a little bit of trouble with the wine because it was quite cold, but it was lovely.
Mm-hmm. And there's an opportunity to become a leader in innovative winter businesses like Skidoo, and a Canadian example, Canadian icon. And similarly, Sorel, best-selling winter boots in the world, Canadian company, started in Kitchener. And there's other things that we can focus on. Edmonton's a world leader in cold weather construction. We could become leaders in winter fashions. Right now we support an outdoor winter fashion show in conjunction with Western Canada Fashion Week, trying to encourage them to think about designing for winter. And then there's places like COLD. COLD stands for Center for Outdoor Living Design, and it's dedicated to improving livability in cold weather cities. And they have design competitions, trying to get people to focus on that and think about that. They engage artists, architects, landscape architects, planners, urban designers. A local Edmontonian, you might have seen, Matt Gibbs, submitted his master's thesis called The Edmonton Freezeway and won an award from COLD. This is based out of Cleveland, by the way. I figure if Cleveland can do it, so can Edmonton, or somebody in Alberta can do this for sure. And I think it's really important to keep the dialogue going and elevate the discussion around this. So picture someday in the future, the
City of Lloydminster.
Yeah, the Gord Jackson or Jeff Bosin or whatever Center for Winter Design Excellence somewhere here in Alberta. This is part of the vision. So in terms of, this is the story pillar. These are photos. I think that our collective icy stairs are starting to melt. And we really have moved beyond the Deadmonton tag. Edmonton's really been working hard to toot its own horn. And winter city design can completely be a way to market our city and to make it more attractive. As this developer has done for this particular development, he's here said winter city design. And whether or not you agree that this particular example embodies that, they're using it as marketing, and so can we all. And it's part of our core identity, and we can make something wintry Edmonton, definitely. And we are, as Katie said, the largest city of a million people on the continent, and we need to boast. We need to learn to rock that and fall in love with Edmonton in wintertime. Also, I just want to say, in terms of the economy pillar, in particular in downtown, we are investing millions and millions of dollars in our downtown, and we need to realize the full economic benefit of that investment. It just doesn't make sense to design for summer conditions. We need that perpetual summer state of mind to dissipate. And in order to realize that full potential, we need to design for winter, and then we will be better economically and socially. And that is just so important. No.
We just had I don't know if any of you caught it. It was pretty active on the Twitter feed in Edmonton. We had a designing downtown. And the Petchakucha Night. And Sue, of course, with her winter lens, got right in there as a sponsor and had 5 tons of snow delivered.
No, 3.
3 tons. Oh, sorry, 3 tons. Yeah, because last time we had 5 tons from ice rinks. Now, when we're us and we're thinking, well, where can we find snow now? We thought, well, we could go to Snow Valley and have it made. We thought, no, arenas. What problem do you think we ran into? Transporting, and we solved that one. What other problem? Any? Because you're not going to believe this, because we didn't believe it either. They told us that it presented a biohazard because someone might have spit on the ice, and then it was shoveled up, and then some kid could eat it, and it would be a biohazard. So Sue, tenacious as she is, we fought all that, and for our launch, so these are things you can think about. For our launch, we had a bunch of snow delivered, and it was a really good idea at the time. It was on 104th in Edmonton, and we had fire pits delivered, and it was just magical until we realized we had to shovel the snow out. And so that was 5 tons of snow. And so this time you only delivered 3 tons of snow.
Yeah, there were weight limits because the wind spear is above the LRT.
So there was weight limits. We could only deliver 3 tons. But on those 3 tons of snow outside, we placed signs that said, "Are you designing for winter?" And even little things like that, even if no one addressed winter in the Pechakucha, at least it was on people's minds. And so those are little things you can do the next time. Don't throw away your snow when you're cleaning your arenas. Think of snow as an asset to be used.
Mm-hmm.